Member for Ottawa South.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. And 7 minutes is an appropriate amount of time, and I'm reminded of my contracts professor in law school who once said, it's very important to remember, unlike my colleagues from the Conservative side, that verbosity is no substitute for content. So I'm going to actually focus on two themes today, Mr. Speaker, that I think are important for citizens right across the country. The first is infrastructure. We know that we have to invest in the next generation of infrastructure in the country, that we're standing on the shoulders of previous generations who have invested heavily in our water and wastewater systems, our road systems, our bridges. And we know, of course, that we're going to be dealing with even more challenges on the infrastructure front because of the realities of adapting to climate change, something that the government still refuses to address. But on the infrastructure side, we know that the government, the Minister of Infrastructure, is regularly talking about large sums of money being available. But here are the facts. We know that as of April 1st, there's an 87% decrease between last year and this year in terms of the Build Canada Fund and the amount of money available for the entire country. The government's not denying that. It's exactly $210 million for the entire country this fiscal year. We're not talking about gas tax. We're not talking about HST rebate. We're talking about the Build Canada Fund. And when it comes to, for example, my own hometown, my city of Ottawa, the city of Ottawa would hope to receive $65 million from the Government of Canada to help improve our water and wastewater systems so that we can protect our incredible Ottawa River, the source of our drinking water, or surface drinking water. They'd like to be able to invest in this system before the 2017 anniversary of the country, to be able to actually strengthen that infrastructure. We know that in not investing in that infrastructure now, what we're really doing is we're compromising jobs. We're compromising giving rise to new technologies and new processes for the international, the global market that we ought to be able to do very well in. And at the same time, in not investing in infrastructure, we're compromising the support for our middle-class families who would benefit not only from the infrastructure investments but the economic spin-offs that follow. And when the government says otherwise, Mr. Speaker, we're really hard-pressed to believe them, because here's a letter dated yesterday on Canada-Nova Scotia Infrastructure Secretariat letterhead. Let me quote from it. This is the opening two paragraphs. You are no doubt aware that the federal government announced on March 28, 2014, that the new Building Canada Fund is, quote, open for business, close quote. Nova Scotia, like all other provinces and territories, was surprised by this announcement. It goes on to say, the province has not signed an agreement with the federal government for the NBCF, and no details have been released to us on the application process. It lends credence to the notion that it's a shell game and it's a card trick, Mr. Speaker, on the infrastructure side. We know in the last instance of the infrastructure investments made by the government that they forced every municipality in the country to put up a total of 9,000 vanity billboards. 9,000 billboards. Canadians recognize them because it infuriates them. And then they stuck the bill to the municipalities where the billboards were actually mounted. In the case of my home city of Ottawa here, the mayor of Ottawa, the former mayor, Larry O'Brien, confirmed in writing that $50,000 was spent by the city of Ottawa in putting up the vanity billboards for this government in different infrastructure settings across the region here. The second issue, Mr. Speaker, I want to raise is the transportation safety issue. And I see here that we've seen in the budget there's a cut to road safety investments, there's a cut to marine safety investments, there's a cut to airline safety investments, and there's a marginal increase in rail safety, about $1 million. Now, if we look at the real numbers on rail safety, this is a very important issue for Canadians in the wake of Lac Mégantic, Mr. Speaker. We know the government's spending more money on Economic Action Plan advertising, $42 million this year, $42 million this year alone, more money on advertising than they're spending on rail safety in the entire country. In the entire country. Now, that's a time when the Auditor General has told us that only 26% of the planned audits for rail safety were performed, that Via Rail's not been audited in 3 years, carrying 4 million passengers a year, that only 9 inspectors are in place when we need 20. You know, we're seeing massive increases in diluted bitumen being transported by rail, and we're going to have 1 million barrels of excess capacity of oil that can't go on pipelines in the next decade. But they find the money for the vanity advertising or the 24/7 show, the joke, the show of the Prime Minister at work, paid for with taxpayer dollars. Mr. Speaker, I'll be looking forward to coming back to these themes and others when my time comes back in terms of next speaking opportunity. But I did want to get these two issues, infrastructure and transportation safety, on the record and juxtapose both against some of the foolish spending going on by the Conservative government.
Hear, hear.